Hello YouTube. In front of me today, I've got a pretty interesting product that you may or may not have heard of called the Infinity Game Table. It's more or less a 32-inch coffee table screen, like a giant screen that is meant to play board games and kind of other, basically low fidelity, old school type games. Games you normally have to get out and set up and that kind of stuff, and you just don't have to because you've got this giant screen sitting in front of you that's a huge 10-point multi-touch touch screen. You can all sit around it, set your drinks on it even if you want to with coasters and play a game of your choosing. And there's all kinds of different options. I'll get to that in a bit. For now, let's do a very quick tour of the hardware. Sorry for the mess. We're setting up for Christmas, by the way. You got these metal legs here that it comes with. They're kind of nifty looking. They've got the Infinity Game Table logo on a sticker here. They are fairly heavy duty. They feel like aluminum, I think. And then you've got these little quick disconnect buttons, although they don't really disconnect easily. There's plenty of comments about that on the internet. This is metal, this rim around here. This is the 32-inch version. There used to be a 24-inch version where this wasn't metal. But it does feel pretty substantial. This whole thing is about 40-something pounds, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And it's really not meant to be moved around a lot either. That's the other thing. So it's certainly not a portable solution. This is something that's meant to be a fixture in your home. And it's supposed to be a convenient place to sit down and just enjoy a game with the family or with some friends that are over or something like that. Does it succeed at that? We'll get to that in a bit. I'll tell you my thoughts on it. I've actually owned this product now for 2 years, so I've got plenty of impressions I can go through on this thing and tell you what I like and dislike, what I think they could do better, what's improved over the years at this point, 24 months of ownership basically. There are some ports down here. I do want to show you these real quick before I get into some of the screen-based stuff. These two USB ports don't have a purpose, which is kind of interesting. They may at some point, and neither does that micro SD card slot, which would be awfully nice because it does need more storage. The volume rocker is here, and that's the power button, and then that's where you plug in for the power, which, by the way, runs down the leg of this and goes to a little quick disconnect thing that plugs into an AC adapter. That is a battery. This is sold separately. It's a $200 product. That I don't think most people need, honestly. It's kind of a waste of money, but I bought it on a whim and along with the table because I had some extra rewards, I think. So this product costs $1,000. It is not cheap. It is definitely an investment. Is it worth $1,000? I'll get to that also in a bit. For now, let's take a look at some games and see what this thing is capable of. I'm going to go ahead and power it on here. And today, more broadly, I'm going to be doing one of my pros and cons videos. All right, we're booting up here. Got a pretty cool little animation. This has been the same one since the beginning. Arcade1UP is the manufacturer. As you might recognize them from having manufactured many, like Miss Pac-Man arcade cabinets and things like that, sit-down head-to-heads and things of that nature. They make all kinds of different games, and most of them are pretty good quality. This is one of their more interesting products. I was originally drawn to this. Let me get on a soapbox for a moment to talk about my thoughts on the general philosophy of this thing and what I think is really cool about that. If you've got kids or if you just live in the real world at this point, you've probably noticed that pretty much everybody is glued to a screen now, for better or for worse, and mostly for worse, because frankly, it takes you out of life and it puts you in a virtual world of your own little shell, your own little slice of reality, and you can just kind of insulate yourself from the rest of humanity. But we're not really made to operate like that. And the problem is, all these old games that we used to sit down and play together, there's so much friction involved in sitting down and getting out pieces and that sort of thing to actually engaging in that sort of activity. So what does everybody do? They default to the easiest path, which is the screen. You just sit down on your, laptop, gaming console, phone, whatever, tablet, Steam Deck, and you play a game. And that's lame because it's low quality interaction, even on like Discord and stuff, when compared to you sitting around with other humans in these locations and playing an actual real game. So that's what this is supposed to do. And this product is meant to accomplish a replacement for the problems of having to get out all these games manually and set everything up. And so it provides, when you buy the thing, you get like 50 games out of the box that are free, and I don't remember exactly which ones they are. They're on the website that they make. This product has a website, and it's got like a full listing of games, including the ones that come with it. But stuff like that, let's see here, Battleship, I think, was free, Solitaire, Backgammon, those kinds of games. Scrabble comes with it. A lot of the branded Hasbro games, originally like Candyland, those came free. Life, Let's see what else was free. Connect 4, Dominoes. Those types of games are the ones you can expect to get. Hungry Hippos, which is awful, actually, because there's so much action involved, and it's not a great game to begin with. Oh No is like a ripoff of Uno. It works pretty well, actually. Operation kind of sucks. Othello is fun. You know, Paint, I think, is free. I don't know if that's free or not, actually. I'll take that back. I think I had to pay like $1 or $2 for that one. Anyway, most of these games that you see, probably about half of them came with it. And it's enough to really enjoy it. Even that is great. Then you've got your nice premium games like Ticket to Ride. I think it's like $10. Same with Pandemic and Hues and Cues. Those games are really, really well programmed. They're much higher quality than most of the games that come with this thing. I just think the programmers spend a lot more time on them and they update them and things like that. And that's a big plus. So you can definitely expand your library. There's a game store here. I'll come back to that in a bit in my pros and cons and show you a little bit more about this stuff. But it's really neat. I mean, for the most part, you know, I'm very happy. This is, oh, Spot the Difference Anime Edition. This is cool. I didn't even know this was out. I think I'll get this. My kids would love that, actually. The Spot the Difference regular one's on here. It doesn't come with very many pictures, but you know, a lot of the games are pretty half-baked. I'll be honest with you. But when was the last time you sat down and played, you know, like Mancala, for instance? Like, nobody plays this game. But it's fun. It's a great game. It's well made. And that's the reason why it was popular for so long. But now you've just got better options. Better in some ways. Better in terms of dopamine production. But not necessarily better in terms of social interaction. And that's what's cool about this thing, is it attempts to solve that problem. It's trying to bridge the gap between the technology and the old school interactions between humans that were so healthy before everything was consumed by technology and screens. And you might say, well, this is a screen. Yeah, but it's kind of not. I mean, it is, but the delivery of the content is what the problem is, right? So the content that's on the screens is clearly what people refer to when they say screens are an issue. It's not the actual screen. Anyway, enough soapboxing. I will just say this, and this is my first Pro, so let's go ahead and just launch into that right now. This thing does absolutely accomplish its primary task, despite its price tag, of encouraging kind of old school family and friends togetherness, where you sit down, it's easy. You turn it on, it takes 30 to 45 seconds to boot up. It's not the fanciest and the fastest device on the planet, but it works fine. And it has so many options for games that you can sit down and you can have a party. Whether it's a family or friends or whatever, you can drink some alcohol and have a great time with some friends. We've certainly done that. And games like Make Your Briefcase, which is more or less a clone of Codenames because they don't have a branded version of that on here, or Artists and Liars. That's one of those like deception-based games where one of the people is a liar and the other ones are artists, and they're all taking turns drawing one line. And the liar has to make it look like they know what they're drawing and everybody else does and they don't. And that's the purpose of the game. And you are assigned points based on how successful each party is at accomplishing their deception. That's a lot of fun. There are a lot of really cool games on here. I would like to see more. But there are more every, couple of weeks, every few weeks they launch a new game. So it actually is pretty well expanded over time. Yeah, I've been impressed considering that it doesn't seem to have a huge adoption rate, probably because of the price. And again, I'll come back to that in a minute. The next big pro is it does have a large, bright, and colorful display. It actually looks really good. I mean, it's not OLED or anything like that. It's certainly not the highest quality LCD out there, but it's pretty high res, as you can see. I have no idea what resolution this is. I don't believe it's published. I'm not going to sit there and measure it and try to figure that out, but it looks great. It's really, honestly, pretty nice looking. And even though the refresh rate's not the best and the programming's a little bit, off and the CPU could be better, again, I'll come back to that in a bit. The display certainly looks good. And unless you're in like a bright environment, like a really bright environment, obviously you can see the reflections of those windows up there at the top. You really don't have a lot of trouble with reflections. If you're looking at angles, it gets a little bit worse. But when you're sitting above it, it works pretty well. So no real complaints about that. I think it actually works quite well. I tried to put a screen protector on this thing, by the way. It was an absolute disaster, partially because I suck at applying giant screen protectors, but also because I just don't think it's possible to do it without screwing it up. It's way too big of a screen. The material of the screen, I'll come back to in a bit as well. That's actually one of my cons, but that's the second pro. The third pro is it is a sturdy and well-constructed device with the metal legs and the metal frame and all that stuff. It does feel like it's built to last. We've spilled things on it before. It hasn't been a problem. It does have some touch input wonkiness if you have like liquid on it, or if the screen gets really dirty, you have to clean it to make it kind of work like it should again after that. But that's pretty, obvious stuff. Everybody kind of comes to expect that. So it's pretty well made, and it feels like it's going to last. Some people have had troubles with longevity in their closed Facebook group. I think it's closed. You can go in there and read some stuff about it if you ask to be invited to that. We had our AC adapter fail. It's like a $15 replacement on Amazon. It's not a big deal. It's a generic part. And again, that kind of just plugs into this. And then runs up the leg, and that's it. So it's just a modular thing. It's not too big of a deal. No problems with anything else. We do have a surge protector on it. I don't want this thing to just randomly die on me because it is pretty expensive. So that's my next pro. The next thing I want to talk about is it does have a pretty good assortment of games too. And it's, the ones it comes with, the 50 or so that come out of the box, are actually definitely sufficient for you to have a great time with it for a long time. But once you start buying stuff, you don't spend a whole lot of money on it. I mean, each game's like between $3 and $10 probably on average. Most of them closer to $3 or $4, and most of them are pretty good. Like a lot of them are. I mean, some of them suck, but you can probably tell just looking at the previews which ones those are. I don't know why you'd pay 99 cents for a calculator, by the way. That's kind of a ridiculous thing. It's almost like a joke. I've never even seen this game. These are newer ones that just came out. You can get little previews of the games here, and I think it's really neat how the wireless connectivity allows for the updates to the firmware. Every now and then you get, OS anyway, I should say. It has OS updates probably once every few months or something. They've improved the dashboard some. It's still a little laggy. That's never really improved much. I think that's more of a CPU thing. But the games selection has, gotten progressively better. And there's some pretty good games. I've never played this one either. Obviously, I don't own that. I did buy Trivia for Dummies, I think. Maybe I didn't. I'm going to buy it. It's pretty cool. Kids would probably like that. So, yeah, I mean, really pretty well stacked with games at this point, considering that its own proprietary OS and all that stuff. So the fifth pro I want to talk about is if you do have kids, there are a couple things on here that are just really phenomenal for kids, especially younger ones. Like we have a 4-year-old, and she loves this. And it's a very well-made educational game that does a phenomenal job of teaching the basics that they are learning in school. And it's really good. I mean, they get rewards like stickers and backgrounds and animals, and they have a fish tank. And that's really cool. I mean, she loves it. She gets on this thing all the time and plays these different games, like alphabet games. And I mean, they're well done. They're not like, cheap knockoffs of anything. It's like a $12 or $13 game. But so anyway, it's just cool because I don't know how to get out of here. I guess you do that. Dashboard. So anyway, that's a huge plus. The educational potential for this thing is honestly massive. And one of the ideas we had when I bought this originally 2 years ago was, my kids would come home and they would default to a screen. They would get on the TV, they would get on a tablet or a computer or a phone or whatever, and that's all they would do for like the next hour or two. It was like their default mode, like kind of like your body has that default mode network. It's sort of like that with them. So I was like, what can I do to replace that? That's frictionless. That's pretty easy. This thing has done a pretty good job at that. I mean, you can open up chess or whatever and play a game of chess if you want to, and it takes almost no time to do it. It's painless. It's kind of like pulling a phone out of your pocket or getting out a laptop or turning on a TV or something like that. Actually, this is taking forever to load for some reason. I think this game does take conspicuously long to load, actually, but it's cool that you can get into it so easily, especially if you leave this thing powered on, which I often do throughout the school week for when they come home and stuff like that. And the idea is that it's something that's much healthier for them to do, especially if they play together, than to be on one of those other devices. So anyway, so those are the major pros. Definitely a lot of things that are promising about this. It's really cool that they've got these little backgrounds you can do, and you can select like an icon for your character. It's got a lot of promise. It's not it's not perfect by any means. Definitely needs a lot of work. You can play online, by the way. That's what this is, but you really have to have somebody's sort of like their handle, their friend code, so to speak. It's more like a Nintendo experience than it is actual like lobby-based thing, which is probably good actually, because it encourages, again, in-person, high-quality interaction with friends and family. I think it's the biggest pro about this thing. Negatives. All right, let's get to the cons. So first of all, it's definitely not fast. I mean, it is not made to be an action game experience. They sell action games for this thing, and I will never understand why. I don't know exactly which ones are action games that I have installed. I don't have very many of them on here because I've removed them because they are terrible. It's not made for action games. The reaction speed is terrible of the lag time on the screen when you press something. Let's just start a game of Hungry Hippos here. Maybe this will be a good example. This is a terrible game, by the way, because that's not what this thing is made for. But the kids like it, whatever. You know, I mean, look at the animation. It's terrible. It's so laggy. I mean, what on earth, right? You can just tell from the look of it when you tap it. It takes forever for it to happen. The animation's kind of goofy. Whatever, it's fine. It's not made for action games, though. It doesn't really matter that much. I do wish it was a little bit more powerful. Something like quad core or twice as powerful as this would be really nice to just feel like you were actually moving when you touch the screen. But you know, on the games that, let's get to another pro actually in the middle of the cons. It's not a separate pro, but like this is one of my favorite games, for instance. And this one requires, like most of the games here, absolutely no reaction speed, even though it kind of is like a fast-paced game. So this is a game where you can, in any order or in any direction, you can go through and make, you know, words of any kind, which is really cool. You can go in different directions. Sorry, I can't talk while I'm doing this because apparently my brain doesn't work like that. Really fun. I mean, that is not a word. Anyway, this is one of my favorite games. We go rapid fire. I find a ridiculous number of words on this. I'm actually dangerous at this game, although I can't display it to you right now while I'm trying to do the video at the same time. So most of the games, it doesn't matter. I mean, look, Tapple's another one of those big commercial games. That's not an action game either, even though it does require some like quick response type stuff. It all works really well. I mean, the games that are board games of sorts, that's what this thing is made for. The screen looks great. The lag time doesn't really matter that much. I just wish it had been better. So that's my first pro, or my first con, I mean. The next one is some of the games are really buggy. Like Scrabble is a good example of that. You know, like I mentioned earlier, you can't actually challenge words in Scrabble, which, I mean, I don't know how somebody overlooked that. If you do, and it's not a word, it just, if you try to play a word, it just tells you it's not a word if it isn't, which of course is not how actual Scrabble works. You're supposed to be able to bluff and play words that aren't actually words. And if nobody challenges you, you get the points. So you can't do that. So if I start a Scrabble game here, and again, I wish it could be a little faster, right? So I'm going to demonstrate here. So if I'm going to pull up my letters here, let's make a word that's not a word here. Let's do T, E, P, which is not a word. I'm going to hit the check mark. And it's like, no, that's not a word. Well, that's not how Scrabble works, guys. I mean, you make Scrabble. You should know this. It is published by Hasbro. I believe they made the actual game. Kind of surprising they didn't have that down. But instead of fixing Scrabble, they just made a whole nother game called Crossy Word, which is interesting because it is more or less a clone of Scrabble without the branding. and then you can challenge words. So, I mean, I guess they kind of worked around it. But that's a bummer, right? I mean, see, look, it looks the same. Even the opening screen is the same. It's kind of lame. But most importantly, it allows you to challenge words. So if I go into this and I try to play a word that's not a word, for instance, phony. That's not how you spell that. I'm going to hit check. It lets me play it, and then they have to challenge it within that period of time. Challenge. Is this a word? Well, you can say yes or no. So if you have a Scrabble dictionary, you can look it up. I love this. This is how it's supposed to play. Yeah, that's a word. Phony is a word. Got a lot of points there. So anyway, and then he lost a turn because he challenged and it wasn't a word. That's how it's supposed to work. Why couldn't they code that originally? The third one is that the screen is in fact plastic. You probably didn't notice this earlier, but you might have. There are some scratches on this screen, which I really don't know if I can show you. There's one there. You may not be able to see it. It's got a couple deep gashes. Again, we've had it for 2 years, so it could certainly be worse, but I keep pretty good care of it. I don't cover it or anything like that, although I probably ought to when we aren't using it. I feel like a lot of people are probably going to do that. This did not actually replace our coffee table like I mentioned because you can't really set stuff on it. with reckless abandon. Like if it's metal stuff or something like that, it will indeed scratch the screen. It is a hard plastic. So I wish it was Gorilla Glass or something like that, or even just regular glass would have been nice, but it's fine. That's a small con, but it is definitely a con. So just keep in mind, the screen is pretty vulnerable. So the next thing is the audio quality is kind of a bummer. And I kind of wish that they'd done a better job with the speakers and things like that. So the design overall is a little goofy to me. I mean, you've got these plugs here you're not using. You've got the speakers that aren't great, that could certainly be much better, especially with how big this thing is. You've got this unused micro SD card slot, which as yet still has no purpose and probably never will since we're 2 years in at this point. And then you've got this plug that's really easy to kick loose. They don't even provide this battery. It's a first-party add-on accessory you can buy for $200 extra, like I mentioned. That's a lot of money. Sorry about the focus here, by the way. I think it's the low lights making this difficult. But and the battery kind of sucks, too. I mean, it lasts like probably 4 hours, I think. And it takes forever to charge. I mean, it is a huge capacity, but takes a long, long time. It doesn't fast charge by any stretch of the imagination. So the whole thing just feels kind of beta and half-baked. And that's a real bummer because it's a product that I think has a whole lot of potential if they fleshed it out. I think part of the problem is the value. A lot of people are just reluctant to jump in at the price, which, by the way, is my final con. Let's just jump right into that one. The price, which is $1,000, is just frankly too much to swallow for a lot of people. I think the average family probably would be willing to commit like $500 or $600 to this. I certainly would. I think it's worth it. Personally, I paid $450 for it on a crazy deal they had at, I believe it was Walmart or Sam's Club. I price matched it to Dell, and I got cash back of 10% to Dell, and I had some Dell rewards. And I think out of pocket, I paid like $290, which is incredible. But I would say if you can get this thing for $500 or so, you should jump on it instantly if it's of any interest to you, because it is great for that price. Even though it's got some reliability concerns, like I mentioned earlier, and by the way, the warranty coverage isn't fantastic. It's like a tiered approach to warranty support. I think it's got like a 3-month warranty or 6-month warranty or something. And then after that point, they charge you for any kind of repairs to it, and the price goes up to repair it with the amount of time you've owned it. So that's kind of sucky. Okay. It's not great. I wish I could do a better job with that, but knock on plastic, I haven't really had any reliability issues with mine. So I can't say too much negative about that aspect of it. It's just, I'm telling you from the horror stories I've heard from around the community, like in the Facebook group and things like that, from people who've had issues. Most of the failures are just the AC adapter. So that's nice, which again, you can easily replace from Amazon. There's actually a parts list that somebody put together that you can buy some stuff if it fails and fix that. So all that's not too big of a deal. But again, the price is the elephant in the room. If they could just find a way to reduce the price somehow to like $700 or $800, I think that would be a more palatable starting point for most people. So I really just wanted to mention that because I think it's a bummer that this thing doesn't have a higher adoption rate than it has, because it is a really cool concept. And there frankly just isn't anything else out there that even tries to do what this does. I mean, there have been purported projects that have popped up over the years, and they just haven't materialized because they don't have the resources that Arcade1UP has. Arcade1UP actually has made, I got to mention this too, for the people who want this exact interface and this exact feature set, but don't want to pay $1,000 and don't mind it not being a table. They do have an Infinity Game board, which is, I think is 18 inches over. So it's about, maybe a little bit, like it's about halfway from here to here. Or it's a little more than half, I mean. So it's about this big from maybe like there to there. So it's pretty big still. And it's meant to set on a table in front of you. So you have it like at your like coffee table that you already own, or at your kitchen table or something like that. And you play games on that. That's a cool idea because it only costs, I think, $500. So it's about half this price. That's still a lot for an 18-inch tablet. And, I just feel like they could do a better job with the 32-inch coffee table variety, because this thing is a novel idea for a product that I don't think we're going to see a lot more of in terms of competition anytime soon. Maybe partially because this hasn't picked up as well as it should have. So anyway, that's my overall pros and cons of this thing. Would I buy it at $1,000? No. I really wouldn't. At $600 or $700, yeah, I would. I mean, I think we've gotten that much value out of it. To be perfectly frank with you, our family's probably gotten $1,000 out of this, but up front, it's hard to commit that much to a product that especially only has a short warranty and, feels kind of, like I said, sort of like a beta product of sorts still, even after all these years. I just feel like the interface could be a little quicker, and they could have done a better job with that. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this. Very raw, very honest, very unedited as typical. I hope you've appreciated this. If you find this product at a discount over the holiday season, right now my understanding is it is like 10% off on Amazon or 5% off. It's like 9 something. Still a lot of money. But if you're looking for a really interesting gift for your family and you want to bring back those old days where you sat around and played games, this will accomplish that task. So thanks for watching. And if you like it, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and keep an eye out for my future stuff. I'm going to be reviewing products that I find interesting. I'm not sponsored by anybody. If I ever do receive products, I mention it clearly up front, and that's an incredibly rare thing. So hope you appreciate what I've put together here. It really is just a side gig of mine. And have a great day and a wonderful holiday season.